Let's at least get one conversation going about what's going on in San Francisco, because we have this story from SF Gate. Car break-ins in San Francisco are rampant. Will a $100,000 reward help? You know what I love about this? Let me read. They say on Tuesday morning, Mayor London Breed announced a new privately funded reward of up to $100,000 leading to the arrest and conviction of individuals involved in organized crime rings, which the mayor's office says fuels automobile burglaries. The reward is funded by private donors in the hospitality and tourism industry. Wow. Per a press release, the mayor's office did not immediately return a request for more information about these private donors. So San Francisco has become this nightmare dystopia of failed policy, oligarchs funding reward bounties. I have to imagine the $100,000 could just go to, like, I don't know, hiring police.
Yeah, I mean, this is a disturbing trend. It's also a rise of private security in San Francisco has been very prominent. We're in a huge crisis of morale with the police that's been there ever since last summer. And it's resulting in greater homicides and greater crime overall. And, you know, one of the interesting questions I had when I was working on San Francisco was, because so much of what is justified in San Francisco in terms of open air drug use, public defecation, public camping, these things are defended as ways of not blaming the victim, you know, helping the victim. So one question is, why would then do progressives support policies that end up creating so many more victims? And the answer, it turns out, is that progressives are really focused on saving the victims of the system. They're not. So this is why, you know, 30 times more African Americans are killed by civilians than by police officers. Wow. So why the disproportionate attention on police killings? Because those are killings by people that are perceived as the system. So progressive, you know, the word progressive really was a way to both move away from the word liberal, which was demonized in the late 1980s. It was also, though, a way to kind of unite both the radical left and more moderate liberals. But one of the things that it inherited is this idea that really that the system itself is evil and corrupt, and that we should only care and make a big deal out of the victims of that system. And so you just see all these efforts to basically do anything other than do what needs to be done, which is restore confidence in the institutions of civilization, in the institutions of the so-called system.
You, I guess, I don't know if, well, I'll just ask. You used to be, I guess, a leftist or liberal. How would you describe yourself?
Yeah, I would have described myself as radical left, certainly in the 90s. Yeah. I worked on...
And now you're far right, of course.
I'm here, aren't I?
Yeah.
I worked on environmental causes, climate change. I worked on, criminal justice issues in the 1990s.
There's some people in the comment section saying that you are connected to Soros, George Soros. Is that true?
Yeah, I worked for George Soros's funded organizations, but also his foundation itself, the Open Society Institute.
How was that? Was it impactful for your kind of political ideology? Can you speak to that a little bit? Because I'm getting a lot of comments about that in the comment section.
Yeah, so we have to remember, you're coming out in the late 80s and 1990s, we're coming out of a big war on drugs and a widely held view that we had overreacted to things like crack, and that what we should have been doing is drug treatment, is mandating rehab rather than sending guys off to the prisons for decades. And that's still mostly a view I hold. There was also other things going on. There was liberalization of opioid pharmaceuticals because it was viewed as we were under-treating pain. And then we were also promoting the decriminalization of marijuana, which we viewed as a relatively benign drug, particularly in comparison to alcohol and cigarettes. And then also we were advocating for providing clean needles to addicts because it would way to stop HIV/AIDS transmissions. When I got out of that work around the year 2000, my understanding was that we were seeking to make drug rehabilitation, including work, including compliant, taking your psychiatric meds, doing what you need to do to live a healthy life. My understanding was that we were going to continue to mandate those things as an alternative to prison. What ended up happening, not in a single law, but in a set of laws and ballot initiatives, is that we basically just said, no, we've decriminalized stealing $950 worth of items from Walgreens. We've decriminalized 3 grams of hard drugs. That was in the same ballot initiative. I voted for it. 62% of Californians voted for it, Prop 47 in the year 2014. But you put those two things together, decriminalizing 3 grams of fentanyl and meth and stealing $950 worth of items, and you get, yes, organized crime, but crimes that are being committed to feed people's addictions.
You know, one of the things that really bugged me, and I mentioned this the other day, but I talk about it a lot. I hear it all the time from the progressives. There are more empty houses than homeless people. Having actually worked with homeless shelters, more than one, you learn a lot about why people are homeless, and it's not this fantasy idea of people being like, "Pardon me, sir, I'm desperate for a place to live." It's actually people who are like, "Get away from me! I want to be homeless," and they're drinking. And you try and be nice, respectful. You try to help people, but a lot of them, you know, outside of mental illness, there are people who are literally like, "Don't come near me, or else."
Yeah, you got it. I mean, basically what happens is in the 1980s, you see multiple things going on, but basically you have a crack epidemic, which is really crack and alcohol. Those are the two drugs that would get paired a lot, resulting in homelessness, meaning that people would be, they would quit their jobs and dedicate their day hours to their addictions. They would then disaffiliate. This is the academic word, disaffiliation. They would basically become alienated from friends and family who they had stolen from or borrowed money from. And finally, friends and family are like, you got to leave. They're kicking you out. So you basically, that is how people became homeless. There was also then deinstitutionalization of our psychiatric hospitals. A lot of those folks were dumped on the streets. So that was what was going on in the 80s. The radical left, really working with liberals, basically said these people, the problem with these folks is that they don't have housing. And there was always a move for socialized housing and basically free public housing. So they literally invented this propaganda word. There's no other way to say it. Homelessness itself is a propaganda word designed to trick your brain into putting people with totally different problems in the same category, including people with schizophrenia, people with a heroin problem, and the proverbial mother escaping an abusive husband. The mother escaping the abusive husband who doesn't have a drug or alcohol problem and is not mentally ill, we do a great job of helping that woman. That's not a problem, okay? The person with schizophrenia and the person with an addiction, those folks on the street, that's a huge problem. Not just both for them, it's immoral the way we treat them, but also it degrades the fabric of a city.